Unit 3, Topic 2 notes, adding and subtracting polynomials. So this lesson is going to cover adding, subtracting, and multiplying polynomials, and we're going to start with adding and subtracting. So when we add or subtract polynomials, we can only combine like terms. And like terms are those with the same variable, and that variable has to be raised to the same power. So here, if we look at our first parenthesis, we have 2x squared. So we would look in the other parenthesis for another term that has the x squared variable, which would be this x squared or 1x squared. And we would do 2x squared. Since we're adding, we're going to do plus 1x squared, and that gives me 3x squared. In this case, we just add the coefficients together. We do 2 plus 1 is 3, and then our variables stay the same. It's just x squared. And then we continue on. We have positive 3x, and we look for another term that also has that x variable, which is positive 4x. So then we do 3x plus 4x. 3 plus 4 is 7. We keep the x. It's a positive 7, so I'm going to put plus in between. And then our last piece is those terms with no variables. So we have 4 and 1. Both of them are just regular numbers, so we do 4 plus 1, and we get 5, positive 5. And this right here, this polynomial, or trinomial, would be our final answer. Subtracting is very similar, except for the operation is going to be subtraction. So please make sure you pay attention to if you're adding or subtracting those coefficients. For the first one, we have 5x squared, and we look for the other x squared, which is 3x squared. So we do 5x squared minus 3x squared. 5 take away 3 is 2, and the x squared stays. We move on to that x term. We have 7x and then 2x. And again, we are subtracting because it's subtraction in the middle. 7 take away 2 is 5x. And it's a positive 5, so I'm going to put plus. And then lastly, we have our constant terms, negative 3 and negative 4. And we are subtracting. So when we do negative 3 minus negative 4, when you minus a negative, that double negative becomes a positive. So we really have negative 3 plus 4, which is positive 1. Also, if you're unsure of your positive negative operations or you just want to double check, you can always use a calculator. So if we tried that in the calculator, we would do negative 3 minus negative 4, and you can see how we get positive 1 there. So you can always use your calculator to double check your operations. All right, the next thing we're going to cover is multiplying polynomials. So when we multiply polynomials, there's a couple ways that we can do this. One way is by just distributing. So here we just have two monomials. So in this case, we're just going to multiply these two together. So when we multiply, we have to take both the number and the variable into consideration. We don't have to worry about like terms when multiplying. So in this case, we're going to do our numbers, 3 times negative 4, and we get negative 12. And then we are also going to multiply the variable. So we're going to do x squared times x to the third. So when we multiply with variables raised to powers, we can add our exponents. So x to the second times x to the third is really x to the fifth. And if we break that down, that is because x squared is really x times x. And x to the third is really x times x times x. So here we're multiplying 2 x's, and then we multiply 3 more x's. So if we count up the total number of x's we have 5x's. So the answer to this problem would be negative 12x to the 5th. We combine that coefficient with the variable. The next one, we have 2x squared multiplied by 6x squared minus 3x minus 8. So in this case, we're going to multiply each of the inside terms with the outside term. So we're just going to apply that distributive property. So we're going to start with 2x squared times 6x squared. 2 times 6 is 12. X squared times x squared, we can add the 2 and the 2 and get x to the 4th power. And then we're going to do 2x squared times that middle term, negative 3x. Make sure you're taking those signs with your numbers. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. X to the second times x. Now remember, anything without an exponent is really raised to the first power. So this would be x to the second power raised times x to the first power. And 2 plus 1 is 3. And then lastly, we'll take that 2x squared and we'll multiply it by negative 8. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. X squared, there's no x's with the 8, so we just keep it x to the second power. And that right there is our final answer. Couple more examples here. Now, when we move into multiplying binomials by binomials, I like to use the box method. And the box method just helps students keep all their terms aligned and make sure you do all the multiplication necessary. So with the box, we're going to draw 4 boxes inside a big box. And then we're going to take the 3x plus 5, that first factor, put it on the left, the 2x minus 7, put it on the top. And then we're going to multiply the top and the side for each box. So for this box, the top left, right here, we have 2x and 3x. So that's what we're multiplying, 2x times 3x. Well, 2 times 3 is 6, x times x. They're both x to the first power, so 1 plus 1 is 2. And then I'm going to move to the box to the right. So we're going to have negative 7 and 3x. So negative 7 times 3x is negative 21x. And then we do the same thing for that bottom row. We're going to do 2x times 5, which is 10x. And then we're going to do negative 7 times 5, which is negative 35. Now, once we're here, we can write all these terms out. We have 6x squared minus 21x. 10x is positive, so plus 10x minus 35. Now, if I look here, I do have 2 terms that have the same variable, these 2 middle terms, my negative 21x and my positive 10x. Since those have the same variable, we need to combine them as one term. We combine our like terms. So in this case, we're going to use a little bit of addition to finish up our answer. So we're going to keep this 6x squared. Negative 21 plus 10, we're going to combine our like terms. That's going to be negative 11x, and then negative 35. And that right there is our final answer. We're going to do that one more time over here with 3x minus 6 squared. Whenever we see squared, squared just means multiplied by itself. So in this case, we're taking 3x minus 6, and we're multiplying it by itself, 3x minus 6. So it's a very similar problem to the one we just did, so we're going to use that box method again. And we're going to do 3x minus 6 on the left, 3x minus 6 on the top, and then we just multiply top and side. So 3x times 3x is 9x squared, because x times x, there's 2 x's, x squared. Then we do negative 6 times 3x, which is negative 18x. 3x times negative 6 is again negative 18x. And then negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36. Now we can combine our like terms as we did over in the first problem before we even leave the box. So if we look here, the 10 and the negative 21 that we combined were in this diagonal. If set up using standard form, your like terms will always be in this diagonal. So you can always just add those up before you take it out of the box. So we can take out that 9x squared. And then before we write that middle term, we can do negative 18 plus negative 18, which is negative 36x, and then plus 36. And that is our final answer. All right, I do apologize that this video is getting a little bit long, so apologies. If you feel like you're ready to fly on your own, go forth. I'm just going to help you get set up on these next questions. So this is just combining multiplication and addition and subtraction into the same problem. So if we look at this first one, we have negative 4x squared times, so we're going to multiply it by x squared plus 11x minus 2. And then we're going to subtract. So we have to multiply, and then we have to subtract. So we always want to make sure we're following order of operations, that PEMDAS, which tells us that we multiply and divide first, and then we add and subtract. So we're going to want to take care of this multiplication problem first, and then do that subtraction at the end. So we're going to multiply negative 4x squared times the terms in the parentheses. So we'll start with that x squared, or just 1x squared. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. We do 2 plus 2 and get 4. Then we're going to multiply that negative 4x squared by the 11x. Negative 4 times 11 is negative 44. X squared times x, which is x to the first power, would be 2 plus 1, x to the third power. And then we're going to do negative 4x squared times negative 2. Negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. And then we still have that x squared value. Now that we've done the multiplication, we can move on to that subtraction. So now from our answer for that multiplication problem, we're going to subtract 10x cubed minus x squared plus 9. So we're going to subtract 10x squared minus 1x squared. So I just lined up my like terms, so now I know what I need to subtract. I don't have anything that goes with this negative 4x to the 4th, so that just stays. But I do have a value that lines up with my x cubed, which is 10x cubed, so I'm going to do negative 44 minus, we're subtracting, minus 10. Negative 44 minus 10, again, if you're not sure, take out your calculator. Negative 44 minus 10, we get negative 54. X to that third power. And then we have 8x squared minus negative 1x squared. So we have 8 minus negative 1, which gives us 9. Because remember, if we subtract a negative, that really turns into adding. And then that 9 doesn't have any like terms to combine with it, so it just stays 9. And that is how you do two operations in the same problem. So second problem, very similar. You have multiplication, so you're going to want to use that box method to multiply 2x minus 6 times itself, 2x minus 6. And then once you get your answer for that, then you're going to want to add that trinomial to your answer. So I want you to try that problem on your own, and then if you have any questions, please reach out.